Good evening and welcome to Education Forward. Tonight we're discussing a question at the center of many school debates. Should we change our teaching methods to fit the individual learning styles of our students? Is this a modern, effective approach, or does it create more problems than it solves? To help us understand this topic, we have two excellent guests. Mr. David Chen is a middle school teacher who strongly believes in this personalized approach. Welcome, Mr. Chen.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm happy to be here.
And with a different perspective, we have Dr. Emily Vance, a school principal with many years of experience in managing educational systems. Welcome, Dr. Vance.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We'll begin with opening statements from each of our guests. Then, we'll have a discussion, followed by their closing thoughts. Mr. Chen, let's start with you. Please explain why you think focusing on individual learning styles is so important.
Of course. I believe the conversation has to start with a very simple truth. Every single student is different. They come into our classrooms with different backgrounds, different interests, and, most importantly, different ways of understanding the world. For too long, we've tried to use a single method to teach a room full of unique individuals. It's like trying to use the same key to open 30 different locks. It simply doesn't work for everyone. The idea of learning styles is quite easy to understand. We generally talk about three main types. First, there are visual learners. They need to see information to understand it. They learn best from pictures, charts, and videos. Second, we have auditory learners. They learn best by listening. They remember information they hear in a lecture or a group discussion. And third, we have kinesthetic learners. These students learn by doing, by touching, by moving. They need to build things and participate in activities to truly learn a concept. Let me give you a real example from my classroom. Just last month, I was teaching a lesson on fractions, which can be a difficult topic for many students. In the past, I might have just explained it on the board. But this time, I tried something different. For my visual learners, I prepared a colorful chart showing how circles can be divided into parts. For my auditory learners, I had them work in small groups, explaining the concept of a numerator and denominator to each other. And for my kinesthetic learners, I gave them pieces of paper and scissors. Their task was to physically fold and cut the paper to create their own fractions. The result was amazing. I saw students who usually struggle suddenly become engaged and excited. They understood the lesson because it was presented in a way that made sense to them personally. It wasn't about making the topic easier, it was about making it clearer. This approach does more than just teach a subject. It builds confidence. When students understand how they learn best, they're not so afraid to try difficult things. They have a tool to help themselves. So when we talk about focusing on learning styles, it's not about giving every student a different lesson. It's about offering different paths to the same destination. It's about making learning possible and effective for every child in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. A very passionate opening statement. Dr. Vance, you've heard Mr. Chen's argument. What's your perspective? Please share your opening statement with us.
Thank you. I want to begin by saying that I agree with Mr. Chen on a fundamental point. Every child is unique, and every teacher who cares about their students knows this. However, my concern comes from a practical place. The reality of our school system is complex, and we must consider the real-world effects of this approach. Let's think about a typical teacher. This teacher might have 5 classes a day, with 30 students in each class. That's 150 students. Is it truly realistic to expect that teacher to prepare 3 or 4 different versions of every single lesson every single day? The amount of planning and work would be enormous. Our teachers are already working incredibly hard. Asking them to become experts in identifying and teaching to multiple learning styles for every student could lead to exhaustion and burnout. Then, we must talk about resources. To do this properly, you need more than just a good plan. You need materials. You need technology like tablets and smart boards for visual learners. You need extra space for kinesthetic learners to move around. You need audio equipment for auditory learners. Not all schools have these things. Schools in wealthier areas might be able to afford them, but what about schools in poorer communities? They're already struggling to buy basic textbooks. This could create a serious problem of inequality. Students in rich schools would get personalized lessons, while students in poor schools would be left even further behind. This brings me to the importance of a strong, standardized curriculum. A standard curriculum isn't about making all students the same. It's about fairness. It ensures that every student, no matter which school they attend, learns the same essential knowledge and skills. This is critical for state exams, for college applications, and for life. There's a core set of information and abilities that everyone needs to have. Finally, I want to introduce an important idea: resilience. Part of education is learning how to adapt and succeed, even when the situation isn't perfect for you. The real world doesn't always change to fit your preferred style. A boss won't always give you instructions in the way you prefer. We need to teach our students how to manage in different situations, how to strengthen their weaker areas, not just focus on their strengths. Learning to listen carefully, even if you're a visual learner, is a valuable skill. This is how we build well-rounded, adaptable adults.
Thank you, Dr. Vance, for outlining those practical concerns. Now we'll move into our discussion section. Dr. Vance, you mentioned the significant difficulty for teachers. Mr. Chen, how do you respond to that? Is this approach asking too much of our educators?
That's a very fair question, and I understand why many people feel that way. It certainly sounds like a lot of extra work when you first hear about it. However, I think there's a misunderstanding about what this looks like in practice. It's not about creating 30 completely separate individual lesson plans. That would be impossible, and I'd never ask a teacher to do that. It's about being flexible and offering choices within a single lesson plan. The goal of the lesson remains the same for everyone. What changes is the method students can use to process the information or show what they've learned. For example, let's say the learning goal is to understand a historical event. The core content, the facts, the dates, the people involved, is the same for all students. But when it comes to the final project, I can offer a choice. A student could write a traditional essay. Another student, perhaps an auditory learner, could record a short podcast explaining the event. A third student, a kinesthetic learner, could create a timeline or a small model. The amount of work for me as a teacher isn't that different. I'm still grading based on the same standard. Did the student show a clear understanding of the historical event? But the students are much more engaged because they have some control over their work. And technology can help with this. There are many educational programs that allow students to learn at their own pace and in different ways. A single platform can offer a video, an article, and an interactive game about the same topic. This makes managing different paths much easier for the teacher.
But that brings us back to the problem of resources and equality, Mr. Chen. Technology is a wonderful tool, but it's not available to everyone equally. We talk about the, quote, digital divide for a reason. Some students have fast internet and modern devices at home, but many do not. What about the student who lives in a small, crowded apartment and has no quiet place to record a podcast? What about the family that can't afford a computer, so the child must do all their work on a small phone? If we make technology essential for personalized learning, we risk increasing the gap between students from different economic backgrounds. We can't build a system that depends on every child having access to these tools outside of school. Furthermore, while offering choice is nice, we have a responsibility to teach fundamental skills. A student who prefers to speak must still learn how to write a clear, organized, and persuasive essay. That's a skill that's non-negotiable for academic and professional success. We can't allow students to always avoid the things they find difficult. Sometimes, the most important learning happens when we're challenged.
Let's continue on that idea of preparing students for the future. Dr. Vance, you said the world doesn't adapt to us. How does a standardized approach better prepare students for that reality they'll face after graduation?
It prepares them by mirroring the reality of most workplaces and of society in general. In almost any job, you'll be required to work with a diverse group of people on projects that aren't designed specifically for you. You can't simply say, "Sorry, I'm a visual learner, so I won't read that long email." It doesn't work. A standardized curriculum creates a shared experience and a common body of knowledge. When all students in a class, or even in a country, learn the same core material, they develop a common language for solving problems. This teaches them to communicate effectively and work together to find solutions. It builds the social and professional skills that are just as important as academic knowledge. It teaches them that they're part of a community, and that sometimes the needs of the group and the requirements of a task are more important than their personal preference. That's a lesson in responsibility and collaboration.
I see that point, but I believe we're looking at it from a different angle. I'd argue that the most important skill we can teach a child isn't a specific subject, but the skill of how to learn. If a student leaves school knowing that they're a strong visual learner, they're empowered for life. When they get a new job and have to learn a difficult new process, they'll know that they should look for training videos or ask someone to draw a diagram for them. That's true independence. It's giving them a map so they can navigate any new territory they encounter in the future. A standardized approach, on the other hand, only teaches them how to follow one specific path. And I disagree that personalization means students don't work together. In fact, it can make collaboration even better. Imagine a group project where one student is a great visual learner, another is excellent at listening and organizing information, and a third is brilliant at building things. When they work together, they can bring their unique strengths to the project. They learn to value each other's different abilities. This is much more like a modern, effective workplace, where a team is built with people who have different skills. It teaches students that diversity is a strength.
We're nearing the end of our time. I'd now like to ask each of you for a brief closing statement. Let's summarize your main position on this important issue. Dr. Vance, you may go first.
Our primary duty as educators is to provide a high-quality, fair, and equal education to every single child, regardless of their background or the school they attend. A strong, standard curriculum is the most reliable and practical way to achieve this goal. It gives all students the essential foundation they need to succeed, while being realistic about what our schools and our dedicated teachers can actually provide.
Thank you, Dr. Vance. And Mr. Chen, your final thoughts?
I believe we shouldn't try to fit our children to the education system. We should fit the system to our children. Their minds aren't all the same, so our methods shouldn't be either. By respecting and using individual learning styles, we create students who are more engaged, more confident, and better prepared to continue learning for their entire lives. Every student deserves that chance to find their own path to success.
Thank you both, Mr. Chen and Dr. Vance, for sharing your thoughtful and insightful perspectives on this complex issue. We've heard two compelling arguments. One focused on the desire for personalized, effective learning that engages every student, and the other on the need for a practical, fair, and standardized system that prepares everyone for the real world. It's a difficult balance to find. That's all the time we have for tonight's Education Forward. Thank you for watching.